Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Kelley, and I'm your host for this panel, panel number 10 of this year's, the 22nd Annual Acquisition Research Symposium and Innovation Summit, put on by Naval Postgraduate School and the Acquisition Research Program. The theme of this event this year is creating synergy for informed change, transitioning technology to the warfighter. And this is my second panel of the day, and I have to tell you, the first one was absolutely fantastic and informative, and I expect the same out of this panel 10. And thank you for joining us, by the way. You had a choice, and for those of you that are on this one, I think you made a good choice. This forum is a great opportunity to directly link scholarly acquisition research and scholarly dialogue with acquisition policymakers and practitioners. This is a great way. We have a great list of distinguished speakers from academia, practitioners out in the field, policymakers, and defense leaders. As a matter of fact, this morning was kicked off by Mr. Steve Morani, who is in the acting position within acquisition and sustainment in the Pentagon. And well, it doesn't get any better, from that perspective if you happen to be in the acquisition environment today. The goal of the event is to explore and promote innovative ways to transition technology from research and development to programs in support of the warfighter. Your insights and engagement are essential. And I'm addressing that to the folks that are not necessarily our panelists today, but the folks out there that are listening. And we look forward to your questions. Don't forget, we have a Q&A box down there. So if you do have some questions as it goes along, and feel free to write your question at any time. It's my job to figure that out for you, and we'll make sure that we get it to the right panelists. So panel 10, empowering acquisition through education and innovation. We have three groups of folks that will speak today. And there's just a couple of quick observations that, if I can, over the last couple of years, if you weren't innovating, you weren't paying attention to what was going on. As a matter of fact, sometimes it became a little too much. You had to sprinkle some innovation in there, like cowbell from the Saturday Night Live episode, for those of you that might remember that. And I think sometimes it diluted the conversation. It diluted some of the very serious work that was going on in our acquisition enterprise. And today we've got some folks that did a lot of that very serious work that's out there. The other thing that I have found that I had to sort of keep my inner Marine in check, and that is gaming. We love to do things like Wargame. It's part of our decision-making process, but any other kind of game other than Wargame did not seem serious, and that you were not doing something productive. And so I think those are sometimes some challenging areas for us to get our heads wrapped around. So for our first portion of our panel today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the three of our teams to talk a little bit about their team, introduce their team, even if they happen to be just the only person that's on the panel today, and then go right into their briefs. And we're going to start off with TradeSpace, designing a war game for the Space Force Acquisition Program Managers. And Lieutenant Colonel Lynn, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the time to be able to present TradeSpace, designing a war game for Space Force Acquisition Program Managers. I'm representing the team from Space Systems Command. Chad Millett is the former Chief Learning Officer, and this game was designed through a contract with Toffler Associates, with John Walsh as the main designer and Cherie as one of our game masters, as we'll show a picture of her in the next slide. So the target audience for this war game is mid-level acquisition program managers. And really what we wanted to do was have an ability to have program managers learn through doing sets and reps. Through an acquisition program, it's very difficult space acquisition programs are really long. So it's really difficult to get that expertise through all phases of the acquisition in the early parts of your career. And by providing a war game, we wanted to build an environment where you can understand, make decisions, and fail if needed, because nothing will happen. It's that safe environment. The students can apply their critical thinking, understand why they made certain acquisition decisions at certain points, and actually see the feedback. And that's what's really powerful about games in a learning environment. And through this, we really wanted to provide a proof of concept for the use of war games focused on acquisition strategies in space acquisitions. And this war game looks a little bit different than what would probably be traditionally seen as a war game with maps and tanks and troops on a board. So here you can see the two play sessions that we held simultaneously as we tested the framework. Next slide, please. So here is a really high overview of the game. Even though the participants are intended to be program managers, they are split up into three different roles because space acquisition requires an integrated product team of program managers, engineers, and contract officers. There are other people involved, but these are three critical roles that we wanted to highlight as part of the game. The challenge cards are the scenarios that happen. Things happen during acquisition process that makes acquisition difficult. So they could represent things like obstacles where, oh, there are labor disputes or a technology that wasn't as ready as we thought. And they would have to be dealt with in terms of, well, what are we going to do? And the boxes on the bottom represent the sort of the tension points that either the program management team, the engineering team, or the contract officer team has to allocate to resolve. Each turn there are more scenarios and events requiring more tension points than allocated. That's something that we wanted to have as part of the game so that it would force really critical thinking amongst the team. The TradeSpace on the right is the scorecard. It represents the iron triangle of cost, schedule, and performance. But what also we included is things like the industrial base. How healthy is it? Because when you make a decision, the same scenario that happens depending on whether or not there's a strong industrial base versus a weak industrial base, or strong favorability towards the program, they could actually impact the decisions and the outcomes. So we wanted to make sure that that was captured as well, because that is the reality of space acquisitions and military acquisitions as a whole. Next slide, please. So because this is a game about space acquisitions, we did have to represent the adaptive acquisition framework. The top portion of it is the famous DAU chart of all the different pathways that can be taken. TradeSpace we outlined in the bottom here that mirror and model some of the other ones so that when the players decide on an acquisition strategy, there's a way for us to be able to show progression throughout the pathway. But what's really important here is actually the last line, the last box here for the TradeSpace block, which is the outcomes and debriefs. That's the part where the game, this being a war game, enables the instructors and facilitators to go back and allow the students to review whether or not, what kind of decisions they made, would they have made the same decisions based on the outcomes. And while for a war game, especially in an education war game, the focus isn't on whether or not the acquisition was successful. It's based on whether or not the students made the correct decision at the time, even if the outcomes are unfavorable. And what's the reason for that is you can do everything right, and the game still, because there is a dice element, end up not succeeding. But if you can justify your decisions, then the learning was successful, and it's just an unfortunate outcome. Next slide, please. So in terms of verifying our objectives, when we surveyed the groups of students that prototyped, helped us with evaluating our prototype, one of the things that we wanted to evaluate was whether or not they understood better the 9 tenets of building smaller satellites, getting the acquisition strategy correct, making sure there's teamwork, the contracts, program stability, avoiding SAPs, building ground before launch, holding industry accountable, and delivering capabilities that work on schedule and cost. In terms of the middle column here in this table, that's the mechanics that we use to match the that was designed into the game so that we could tackle those. And the last column is how well the students felt like they learned or improved on that concept. And as you can tell, most of the concepts that we designed into the game were met, though some of because of the design and we were still working on trying to make it well playable and learnable, we weren't able to add mechanics about SAP and building ground before launch. So those very reflectively through the student surveys did not score as well. However, in review of the game, we identified that the mechanics actually are there. For instance, going back to the acquisition pathway slide, uh, using a scenario that either rewards or adds complexity when programs are SAP, those could be something that require either opportunities where some certain attention points could allow you to gain user favorability or increase the amount of defense industrial base, or it can end up complicating integration, which would require attention points perhaps to resolve. The elements are there within the TradeSpace game framework, and we are optimistic that given another playtest, we would be able to add mechanics to add these 2 tenets in there as well. Next slide. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present TradeSpace, the wargame, and I hope you get a chance to read the paper. Thank you.
Hey, really appreciate that, by the way, and really appreciate your shout out to the folks that you worked with. By the way, I just Toffler Associates, very interesting group. I don't know if you're familiar with the book that Alvin Toffler wrote a million years ago. I've got a couple of years on you. I am absolutely positive. Um, and I am going. So he wrote a book called Future Shock. And I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. Since you're the only one I can see, I'm going to look and see. No, probably not.
Sir, I have not read that book,
Yep.
but both John and Sherry have mentioned it, and it influenced their.
So I think I asked them the same question, by the way. I think that the partnership with Toffler Associates was a super good move. By the way, I've actually had a chance to play as well, a quick run through, and we can talk a little bit about that after we run through our other briefs in terms of what were some of the things that you really got out of the game. But what I want to show is, and you can't see this, let me see if I can get that. Nah, it's not going to work. You can see that really old book, Future Shock. This book was written in 1970. This is my father's copy that I ripped off of his bookshelves. It is frightening how accurate Toffler was in terms of some of these things that he predicted. So kudos to you. And what we'll do is we have a question already that came in. So folks, keep the questions, put them in that Q&A box for us, and we'll come back. We'll loop around after we finish, everybody. Jump back on there. Keep your camera on, Colonel, if you don't mind. And I'll tell you what, although I'm not briefing today, I do find when the other panel members nod their head up and down, that's a little bit of validation that, hey, we've seen the same sorts of things. So I think in an environment where we could all use a little bit of mutual support, um, uh, we can keep that on. I appreciate the other folks bringing theirs on. Okay, so let's go into I'm going to call this my team. I know that's not fair. I shouldn't do that. But we've got Jonathan Barkand and Lolita Horne on to talk about DAU, Innovate to Win, DoD Upskilling, Innovation, Readiness. Uh, and I will, just in the interest of full disclosure, I believe that I am very familiar with this effort. I do want to know why Julie Connectel is not on this call, but we can take that one offline. Your other teammate there, and
She's
I'll
here.
throw.
She's here. She's just not presenting, but she is absolutely in the audience.
Well, I want to know, so she can still see me for a chit. I want to know why she is not with the camera on. But we'll go over to Dr. Barkand right now. Talk about your team a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. Or Lolita, are you going to kick us off?
I'm going to start at this time. So
Okay, good to go. I apologize for that. I saw Lolita was spotlighted there for a second.
we're both in there.
Yeah,
That's the good thing about teams. It
for
works out
sure.
nice.
All right, over to DAU. Over.
Excellent. Well, thank you for this. I am Dr. Jonathan Barkand, and I am, of course, joined on the panel by Ms. Lolita Horne, and she is going to be the first one chatting. We do have a third team member, Julie Nechtel, and of course, more importantly, many other members supported this whole effort. Even though we're the ones talking about it, doesn't mean we're the ones that did all the work. There are many team members involved in building this out. And as we dig deeper into this, you'll see that it takes a lot to build an entire innovation model, assess it, and then also assign training associated with it. So our topic here is fostering innovation, not forcing it, an innovate to win story. And you're going to really like what you see here. And more importantly, it is still live on our website. So everyone here can actually enjoy this experience right now. We have FY25 live right now. So everything you see here, you can also be a part of and add to the data set. So Lolita, all yours.
Sure. Yeah. And I did want to give a special shout out to Julie. She's our muscle in the background there, but she opted not to be one of the presenters today. So thank you, Julie, out there in the world. So let me ask you something. Have you ever stood in front of a team, looked around, or for that matter, been on a team's call and looked around and thought to yourself, well, I have the talent and I have the tech, but why does supporting innovation feel like catching lightning in a bottle? You're not alone, and that is where our innovation to win story sort of begins. Fostering innovation, not forcing it, because innovation cannot be ordered or engineered. It doesn't happen just because it's part of a team title or a central goal. Innovation has to be cultivated. Next slide. Earlier this year, the Defense Innovation Board wrote, innovation is not an end in itself. It's a capability to be grown, sustained, and directed toward mission outcomes. And that idea is what was central to what we built at DAU. A few years ago, we asked ourselves a very tough question. Not how do you innovate, but how do you foster innovation across a system as large and as complex as the Department of Defense? Innovation isn't a formula or a checklist or a lucky break. It thrives in a particular culture or a particular climate, a condition that you, me, we can prepare for. And under the leadership of Dr. Marina Theodotou, and alongside about 50 other brilliant contributors from government, academia, and industry, DAU set about to create the tools, the data, the learning pathways, and leadership insights that would help people be ready to think and act boldly. And that's how Innovate to Win was born. Next slide. At the heart of this question is the innovation readiness competencies and skills model. It's built around a deceptively simple question, and that is, what if we could help everyone in the DoD measure their readiness for innovation? And the answer was our self-assessment tool, which is available through DAU's virtual campus, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. The self-assessment maps to 3 essential domains for innovation. The first, innovative thinking mindset. Second, collaboration. which talks to team dynamics. And then the third, cultivation, which speaks to leadership and environment. A little over 40 Likert scale questions, and each domain is assessed. But we don't stop at just giving you a score. We also provide a curated learning pathway with assets drawn from the likes of DAU, of course, LinkedIn Learning, Skillsoft, Harvard Business School, and others. In short, the learning meets you where you are through videos or reading, micro-learning assets, and more, but is also flexible enough to appeal to different styles of learning, different schedules, etc. Now, here's the real game changer. Individual assessments can also roll up to our innovation readiness metrics dashboard, which gives leadership a clear view of the strengths and gaps across a team or a center, or for that matter, a self-selected group. And it does not identify individuals because it's not about judgment, it's about clarity. Where are we strong and where can we grow? Next slide. Additionally, there is the Innovation Playbook, a toolkit of 7 highly flexible, field-tested plays around topics as varied as defining goals and embracing risk. And these plays leadership can use on a case-by-case basis, together independently, based on their own current skill needs, gaps, their own goals for their organization, or what have you. When that playbook is paired with a DAU facilitated workshop, it then becomes this launch pad for real grounded transformation. So not just theoretical, but action-based as well. So we take something very small and individual, and we burst it out to leadership and culture change. Next slide. The playbook is available online. It's packed with resources, case studies, and tools designed to help build and sustain this innovation-ready culture. And ultimately, our mission is the same as yours. Get the right capability to the warfighter faster and smarter. Innovate to Win doesn't attempt to hand off innovation or create innovation. Instead, it just attempts to create an environment or conditions where innovation can take root and take off. Next slide. To explore the Innovate to Win program further, we have the paper, but we also have our Innovate to Win website. On the website, you're going to find the Innovate to Win web event links. So those are bi-monthly events with folks across the DoD and industry. The Innovation Playbook, access to the self-assessment, and tools and articles that you can apply right away. So explore it, share it, and innovate to win. And now to share with you a bit about what we've learned from the data we've collected thus far, I'd like to welcome back Dr. Jonathan Barkand.
Excellent. I always get to talk about technology and tools, which is always exciting. And more importantly, for the page that you're seeing here, we do like to show you that you have the self-assessment function, then you have the learning function and the perform function. And I will point out, even if you don't take the assessment or even join the DAU virtual campus, that is publicly available. You can go download that playbook of innovation wherever you are. And many different organizations have downloaded that and used it within their own innovation culture. And if you're really nice and send us an email, we'll even send you one that you can edit a little bit easier too. But that is a PDF version out there, but we do have a PowerPoint version we've shared with others so they can rebrand and use different items. So with that, please go to the next slide here. We're going to start talking about some data here. The end result is there's visuals for data. You don't have to look too closely at all of the numbers and information, but the end result is, did enough people complete this for us to actually give you some interesting metrics across different groups? Well, just FY24 was one of our fullest launches there. We had a little over 2,000 completions. If we add in FY23, FY24, and today, which is FY25 down there at the bottom, we have a little over 3,500 individual users that have completed it across almost all DoD agencies. And if you've ever asked someone to fill out a survey or take a 40-question Likert response, 3,000 results is actually pretty good, all things considered. So we have a lot of different metrics on that. We also have those pathways that we've been tracking as well. But go ahead and go to the next slide here so I can show you a little bit more about the different things. So it's a 5-point Likert score. And the end result is you're self-assessing, right? You ask different questions, and when you look at the paper, we have all the questions we ask. So even if you like the questions and like the model we built, we do outline the whole model in the paper, including the actual questions we ask. So if you want to reuse some of those in your own environment, it took us most of our time was that. The software was actually not the most difficult part. Building the model, the questions, aligning the learning resources took us most of the time. The actual development of the tool in the platform we use, the virtual campus, is available. And anyone here that has DAU virtual campus accounts can go and complete this right now. And anyone who doesn't can go make an account for free and take the assessment and enjoy all the learning as well. So overall for our scores, looking pretty good across the board. So agree and strongly agree. So 5 was a strongly agree, 4 was an agree. And you can see down the board here, we score very evenly across different areas. And of course, in the paper, lots more data analysis, but I found that that level of data analysis doesn't usually present very well in a 15-minute session basis. Generally, we're pretty good across the board on many of our different scores. We score a little bit higher in the thinking domain, so we are great thinkers across the different ones, but we do score a little lower in the collaborate area. Lower being neutral to agree that they feel for that. And in the DoD setting, we do have our silos and different organizations. So, I mean, collaboration can be one of our weaker points in innovation. But in terms of cultivating that and thinking in those areas, our domains were very well scored. So each of those scores shows you the grand total, averages for each domain, and then averages for each. Each of these competencies also had multiple questions assessed. So don't think it was just we asked them one question, everything was based on that. It's an average across all of their scores. And how I want to show that is with the next slide. So go ahead. It's nice to see the overall number of responses because 3,500 users seems like a lot, but we didn't force anyone to answer every question. So it's a self-assessment. If you want to skip an area because you don't feel comfortable with it, skip the question. So what we wanted to show here is we actually have 19,000 individual competency responses that came out of the pipeline there. So that's a very large data set. And more importantly, a very large portion of them were Defense Acquisition Workforce members. So at DAU, obviously we advertised this to larger DoD, but the community that took advantage of it the most was the Defense Acquisition community. So we're sitting close to almost 3/4 of everyone that took it was a Defense Acquisition coded member. But that still means that 25% of the users that went through it were not acquisition coded. They were just learning about innovation and going through that on their own. And then because we said we wouldn't do any individual ones, we didn't even break down by organization. We just gave you an overarching thing by component because I know sometimes that's a fun thing to take a look at in terms of data and also can start some rivalries, especially because I have Lieutenant Colonel Lynn here, so I'm not going to call out his branch. The good news is everyone evenly did it across the board. So we weren't finding like a weakness across the DoD as a whole. So when you look at the overall table, you can see everyone very evenly scored across each of them within 0.1 of each other, which is almost within standard deviation error. So the end result is the people that took the assessment feel that they are innovative in the areas that we assessed. Now, feelings sometimes get organizational barriers. So we also had some qualitative questions that we asked as well. So if you don't mind, next slide, please. So we asked the question, right? Likert scale questions are great, but you can't always get a feeling of what they are from just a numerical number. So what we did was we talked about some barriers, and those barriers were all summarized. In the world of AI, Copilot can summarize a lot of raw data very quickly. This was nicely formatted afterwards by myself. Still not good at formatting, but they are good at summarizing. And what we ended up with is a couple barriers. So these are not going to be barriers that anyone has seen for anything else. It's not just an innovation barrier. These are barriers to sort of any sort of change. But you are seeing some innovation themes around this as well. Resistance to change, it's there. Resource constraints. We're all in resource constraints. We always have them, but that is a resource constraint to innovation. The organizational culture. The organization itself can sometimes be a barrier to innovation. And of course, communication support. As you know, the lowest scoring, while I do say lowest, 3.8 is not too bad, was collaboration and communication, working across different departments, directorates, components, whatever the case may be, going through all of those. And the themes came up often enough. A lot of people did fill out this, and actually I thought that they wrote more text than they did answer Likert questions. So imagine someone going through 40 questions and still having the desire to write paragraphs of text to us in a survey response. So they felt very passionately about these, and so they had a few barriers for being innovation. So they had a couple barriers, but let's talk about some incentives and things like that. So let's go to the next slide here. So the real question is, okay, so you have some barriers, but if you don't incentivize or provide resources for your workforce, then they're really just stuck with the status quo and dealing with barriers. So does their organization provide those? And a few organizations do. They have recognition and awards. They have thinking and development groups that they put together for training professionals and training development, basically trying to make their innovation workforce better through learning. Leadership and organizational support. Different organizations have strong leaders pushing innovation. I think each of us probably exists in an organization. We can think of someone there that is pushing the boundaries of change and innovation at their organization. But then if someone responded to the survey and they're in a different place, they might not have experienced the same sort of incentives and resources for that. So people, recognition, supportive programs, training development, and of course, my favorite one is, what incentives do we have? And most people said none. Limited or no incentives. And those ones, even though they were personally innovative. So here's the interesting part about the data is these are very innovative individuals. They feel they're innovative. They have the desire to innovate. And then they also answered the qualitative question is, all I find are barriers and I have no resources and incentives to push innovation. So basically making good things. So making our progress there on our different items as we go forward. So wanted to show you some qualitative results because I think it gives you a sense of how people feel about innovation and also giving numerics. I love data as much as anyone else, but qualitative data still counts for me if you can summarize it into themes. And we clearly had obvious themes that came up multiple times from responses. All right, next slide, please. And the great part is that takes us to the end of our presentation. So the end result is, what is your innovation readiness level? Do you have a way to assess it? Yes. Do you have a playbook that you can use completely independently? Also, yes. So if you'd like to go out to that website and find everything else, that is a QR code that you can scan if you're on your mobile phone and want to use that. We're trying to be innovative over here as well. That will take you to the DAU Innovate to Win website. It's also public and accessible through Google. So if you just type in DAU Innovate to Win, you will make it to the website, and it has everything about our process, everything about and the other items. And more importantly, also, you can read our paper for more details if you want to see the data and other things about the competency assessment. So can we assess our workforce? Is our workforce ready? The answers feel like yes to the people that responded to it, but then does the organization support it? And are they incentivizing and providing opportunities and resources dedicated to it? And those are questions that every organization is going to have to answer in order to foster that culture of innovation. Lolita, anything else you'd like to add? We didn't practice or rehearse, but I think we did a great transition there. It's nice having a team and more importantly, having everyone work together. So lots of support behind the scenes to make it happen. And of course, we will answer any questions that come up in Q&A, and we'll have time at the end for other questions. We'll be here. Back to you, Mr. Kelley.
Okay, thanks. I actually, despite the fact that I said that I'm very familiar with this, I have some questions. I think it was tremendous work that you guys did. And I think when Lolita talked about the number of people that were participating in those early days of the numbers just kept growing. So it was really interesting. And we'll get to some of those questions after our last presenter, and that's Dr. Girth. Tailored interventions to foster acquisition innovation. And I am not a PhD, but I am very intrigued by this. I love the idea about intervening with innovation, because that sounds like action to me. It's a piloting innovation innovation program. So Dr. Girth, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Amanda Girth. I'm an associate professor and Faculty Director of Washington Programs at the John Glenn College of Public Affairs at Ohio State University. I'm an expert in acquisition policy and practice, and most recently have been collaborating with Dr. Mike Rayo and Dr. Laura McGuire to marry my expertise in acquisition with theirs in cognitive systems engineering. So bringing a systems approach to tackling the issue of risk aversion in the acquisition workforce. Laura's here in the Zoom with us today. She brings 20 years of industry experience on agile product development and resilience engineering to the applied research that we're presenting here. So I'll begin today with our agenda on the next slide. So leading with our purpose and objectives, I'll then introduce you to our novel Innovation Alliance program, and then move into our findings from the Air Force pilot. Next slide. So as our keynote, Mr. Marani noted this morning, we don't need new policies and procedures. What we need is a change in culture and behavior to beat our adversaries. But you can't get there unless you understand what's driving that behavior, which is where our work comes in. So we work to identify and mediate systemic pressures on the acquisition workforce that impede innovative behaviors by using a non-traditional systems lens. So in other words, not just focus on the individual, which we're apt to do, but rather what is it about the system itself that is affecting culture and innovation? So we use a novel set of interventions called the Innovation Alliance program to address these systemic factors. So this is tip of the spear work. We know that DoD must accelerate acquisition transformation, especially given the EO that dropped a couple of weeks ago. Our charge then is to understand not just those technical barriers, but the underlying system features that stymie innovation and cultural change. So the next slide here introduces you to the program developed in the Cognitive Systems Engineering Lab at OSU, initially applied in healthcare, aviation, and high-risk safety domains, which we adapted for defense acquisition. So the IAP is a bespoke suite of tools. First, it's a method for continuous monitoring to identify the signals in the organization of barriers and facilitators to innovation using a lightweight interview technique we developed called Systemic Contributors and Adaptations Diagramming, or SCAD, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment as we walk through results. Second, it's a model and tool to aid in the interpretation of signals collected through those SCAD interviews and target then improvement efforts. And then third, accelerating impacts workshops. So these implement a co-designed process to stress test high potential innovations for supporting the transition of those ideas and improve their scalability and implementability. So we do this by bringing stakeholders together to assess an innovation across 5 dimensions. The strength of the idea, like how grounded is it in evidence, the alignments of the mental model or agreement towards a solution, pragmatism, cost benefit, the availability of actors and resources, and then the likelihood for sustainability. So this co-created process serves as proving grounds for new interventions, using workshop participants to boost their creativity and lower risk aversion, which is what we know leadership is looking for. So we've seen that workshop tool, the impacts tool, is capable of improving intervention quality and increasing the likelihood of scalability. But just as important, finally, we've used a scaffolded approach to build internal capacity. So we are researchers. We are not. We have all been consultants in previous lives, but we are not here to embed in the organization in perpetuity. Instead, what we do with the program is implement a see-do-teach model, where we anchor knowledge transfer from novice to expert as we execute the program to hand that back off to the organization and develop internal capacity. Next slide. So we first piloted this at AFICC, which is the focus of this particular study we're presenting today. We conducted 25 interviews, as you can see, across frontline and leadership folks across 2 time periods, and conducted 3 of those impacts workshops alongside our embedded project leads. So again, employing that see-do-teach model to facilitate internal capacity development to execute the program when we roll off. Next slide. The first thing I'd like to highlight is what we generally found in how innovation moves or doesn't in the DoD acquisition space. So we recognize there is innovation happening throughout the enterprise. You have exceptional people, but it typically stays hyper-local or local. Yet the objective is we want to take good ideas and share them and proliferate them. So moving from a one-time innovation to global adaptation. So we developed this program as a way to surface innovations to scale by identifying those signals and the innovations that are out there through the SCAD interviews. So we want to see the times when one does something differently that isn't just following textbook. They take initiative. Then surface those ideas, stress test them through the workshops, and move them towards a scalable solution. So on the next slide, we'll share our interview insights, including barriers and enablers to innovative behavior. These are the ones that emerged the most. So system attributes that facilitate innovation and help depress some of those pressures that impede innovation include organizational learning. So fostering continuous improvement by keeping individuals informed about tools, new methods, while also leveraging those past experiences as learning opportunities. Collaboration strengthens innovation by facilitating teamwork across departments and with external industry partners or program partners. Goal alignment ensures that individuals and teams both, horizontally and vertically work towards a shared objective with a clear understanding of what their roles are. Naturally, you're going to see autonomy, right? Granting the workforce the flexibility and authority to complete their work with minimal intervention and fostering independent problem solving and taking initiative. And finally, room for failure and risk-taking encourages creativity by allowing the workforce to experiment without fear of punishment. So this was something that emerged routinely. So pressures then that most often impede innovation, although some of these can go both ways, and I'll kind of highlight those next, include workload pressure, right? When there's a mismatch between work demands and available resources, it makes it difficult for employees to support one another. Time pressure. So the urgency to complete tasks quickly often reinforces the status quo. But this is one where it kind of goes both ways. In terms of a positive, crises or complex problems can then accelerate innovation through creative problem solving. Procedure, policies, process, regulations can both enable change, as in, if it's not explicitly prohibited, I can do it, or stifle it through rigid adherence, which frankly is more often the case. Innovation prioritization, what we mean by that is this reflects how an organization signals its commitment to innovation through resource allocation or messaging or other support structures. And then finally, budget constraints. Of course, this is going to emerge as an issue and a barrier to innovation, particularly in the ability to scale. So who's going to pay for it, right? We have a great idea, but how do we scale it? How do we fund it? And then another dimension to this is how do you attract vendors who might help with creative solutioning. It was great to see that there was convergence in what we saw from the panelists at DAU in their presentation that was just before ours on innovation readiness. So, there's certainly convergence around some of these pain points. Next slide. So we found through this research that leadership is a force multiplier. And what we mean by that is leaders can amplify positively or negatively innovation on their teams. Again, drawing from our keynote this morning, leaders are key to changing bureaucratic habits. In doing so, the positive results from that we saw were leaders who provided top cover for experimentation, modeling that it's okay to live with uncertainty, and fostering autonomy in our teams. Those are leadership attributes that helped alleviate some of those pressures that we just talked about. And leaders stymied innovation when they lacked alignment with team goals. So that means one person in the right position of authority who doesn't share common goals can stop an innovation in its tracks. Failing to delegate authority, and certainly signaling low tolerance for deviation from established norms. So that could be overt or in their response to previous events, as noted here. What we really want to explore next is to find which characteristics and in what combinations really matter. Because we found these things to be independent, not discrete, and need to dig into those interdependencies to better understand the connective tissue that we can use to move the needle to develop cultural competence in innovation. As we go to our key findings, the next slide, you'll see that in some, our study demonstrates that in everyday work, we found high potential grassroots innovation interventions being developed by the acquisition workforce at a local level to quickly and effectively solve problems encountered. However, to benefit from and amplify this innovative behavior, the organization needs to assess innovations as they emerge to determine their scalability and then overcome or mitigate those systemic barriers that hinder broader adoption. Dynamically prioritize those to foster and proliferate, and then also provide resources to support the transition from local to global interventions. So there's a strong need for cohesive, sustained efforts to support behavioral change. Our program can help to provide that structure. By addressing the systemic contributors, the program aims to promote those lasting behavioral changes that leadership is looking for to support that culture of innovation in the DoD by a process of continuous monitoring and capacity building and using those SCAD and impacts tools that I talked about. Finally, as we all know, everyone who's sitting here knows, acquisition innovation, it's not optional. It is foundational to modernizing defense acquisition. And leadership has a critical role in ensuring that the acquisition enterprise is capable of accelerating change to better support the warfighter. Next slide. This is the part where I thank you for your time, and also to those that supported this research. And Laura and I are now poised for your questions as Mr. Kelley moderates.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Girth, and I am intrigued, by the way, that so I'm a retired Marine, and that you actually have, and I didn't quite catch it, but you named an institution within Ohio State after John Glenn. That doesn't surprise me, but that it was somehow associated with this. I think that's fascinating. And just real quick, just from a knucklehead perspective, I definitely, I'm sure other people out there if you had a chance to listen to Lieutenant Colonel Lynn and the DAU team, and now Dr. Girth, there you could throw it into Copilot or Chat GPT and say, hey, give me some unifying themes from all these things. I think if a knucklehead like me can see some, and I'll give you three. In the Marine Corps, by the way, I can only count to three. And so that's why I come up with three. But I think goals were a big theme of that. And by the way, I had to be reminded, and I heard it the first time from Dr. Barkand. Collaboration was something that I think it was also a common thread throughout. Certainly brought up when Lolita had a chance to talk about, the three elements of the innovation tool. But the one that you brought up, and now I feel like I'm sort of inserting my own question here, but I'll do it anyway, was autonomy. Which you have to be careful when you say things like autonomy, because somebody's going to get you out there flying a UAV, and it's not going to be the kind of autonomy that you're talking about. I wonder if you could just briefly talk about autonomy there. And I'm just going to, while you're kind of formulating your thoughts, I'll pollute them a little bit. There's a book out there by a guy by the name of Daniel Pink named Drive. And I've titled Drive, and he says, people respond positively to three things, and I can remember those because it's only three: AMP, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And purpose, this idea of mission, is one of those other things that I think drive, I know I heard mission a couple of times from all three presenters today. That a clearly stated goal, a mission that you can believe in, even in today's chaotic environment. I'd be interested in your thoughts about how that can keep, even in these unsteady times, that it can keep the workforce realizing that, hey, I might fail, but it's important because it's going to help me satisfy the mission. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to actually do something. I'm going to go in reverse order. If I can ask you to respond to that, Dr. Girth, and then we'll go to Lolita and Jonathan and Dr. McGuire. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that as well, please. And then over Lieutenant Colonel Lynn. So back over to you, Dr. Girth. Over.
Thank you. So this concept of autonomy emerged often in our research. And what I didn't share is that we've also pivoted to working with the Army Contracting Center, Aberdeen Proving Ground. We have a pilot running there as well. This issue of autonomy emerged in that space, no surprise as well. So allowing people to have the flexibility and freedom to complete their work, and as they see issues emerge, giving them the space to respond to those. Now, in some cases, that may be, and I could tell a story of a young enlisted gentleman who saw a need that he wanted to fill, a technology need, and his supervisor didn't get in his way. He said, just, you can go do this, you can run with this, but you need to do it after 5 o'clock. So yes, did he give him autonomy to do what he wanted to do? He did. Did he give him the time and space or the support perhaps that he needed to do it? No. So this issue of autonomy is certainly a complex one, and I appreciate you raising it. Laura, is there something you'd like to add to this?
I would add to that it's about delegating the authority at the appropriate level to be able to act and innovate without needing to escalate through, multiple levels of authority to be able to take action when the situation demands for agility and demands for quick response.
Love the delegation piece, by the way. That's a bonus material. Okay. Dr. Barkand, Lolita, over to you. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll add one thing to it, just because autonomy from a personal perspective is always important. But of course, whenever I think autonomous nowadays, I work in IT. So what am I thinking about? Think about AI, LLMs, things like that. And I do think they have a place in some of that too, because autonomous thought can be set up. Essentially, an individual have the ability to make their decisions without having to collaborate with others. And of course, autonomy is really important. So it's one kind of things, can autonomy exist with collaboration? And more importantly, are we in a culture where you have to have autonomy in order to be able to innovate, because there's so many barriers in place that you have to at least be able to work within the space you have. But I also wanted to add in the little autonomous innovation cycle as well, because essentially that's something that can provide perspectives that aren't even within your own group or within your own collaborative group. So using some of those functions for that, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And I know you're a big fan of it, and you've seen different items of AI within those acquisition policies. I think eventually you'll start bringing those into the fold, because it's going to come up with solutions that normally wouldn't even be thought of within your circle. So I think of autonomous, and there's also offloading that autonomy into something else and saying, this is the model that's going to give us decisions, and then one person gets to make choices on it. So I still think decision making should be at the heart of what we do, but it's sometimes going to allow that autonomous innovation from an AI LLM perspective. So toss a little bit of IT into that overall question, because I think Dr. Girth had the personal and responsibility perfect.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to foot stomp something that Dr. Girth brought up earlier, and that is along with the autonomy, because one of the barriers that we ran into was that the idea of innovation, when we started way back when, it was just that it felt like it had to be so big that it couldn't be a policy change or a process change that alleviated toil and in your own sphere, because they wanted to create the AIs of the world. So they had the great ideas, but they thought their idea wasn't good enough, or because it wasn't with the idea group, maybe it wasn't worthy. So I think that also the point that you made about the top cover, the leadership encouragement, that how do we take what we find valuable in the worker bee level and give it the money, the chutzpah, the chutzpah behind it to give it the legs. That's the thing that takes that autonomous idea and innovation and brilliance and turns it into something that can have a lifespan, right? So I just wanted to put that on the table too. Thanks.
Love it. So you brought out a little bit, so maybe a little bit of tension, but these were also things that were pointed out, and that is sometimes innovation can be very local, and I believe you guys also talked about not forcing it, right? I think that was something else that we heard. So maybe it's not ready to scale, and that's why then sometimes it can become looked upon as a failure. Lieutenant Colonel Lynn, over to you. And you do not have to respond. I just thought there were some interesting points brought up there. Over.
Well, sir, the TradeSpace game is an example of innovation in the education training space for space acquisitions. And in terms of the autonomy part, it's another tool, especially with the new generation who grew up playing more games and familiar with that concept. Having a serious game that teaches and allows them to experience it, in addition to the DAU course tracks that are facilitated workshops or lectures, that provides a wealth of options. So for the autonomy of the student, it gives them a different option. If they prefer to learn through games, then they voluntarily enter this magic circle where they won't fight against scenario. They won't think that I'm just goofing off, rolling dice. They are actually learning. And those who still prefer more of a lecture, traditional education method through seminars and lectures, they can still continue to get their credits that way as well. But gaming has a strong legacy of promoting mastery, and gamers are very passionate, right, in terms of achievement. So we hope that through this TradeSpace framework, we can tap into that.
Yeah. I appreciate you picking up on that mastery piece. That was also part of that Daniel Pink. Hey, so I think that you've just thrown out a super interesting concept here, and I'll be bringing it up to the president, and that we can actually get CLPs by playing games. I don't know what the rest of you think about that, so I love it. Maybe we'll have a little scoreboard for everybody. Okay, since I have you right now, I'm going to go to one of our, so the first question we got today, and I'm going to put a little spin on it real quick, and this is for you, Lieutenant Colonel Lynn. In today's world of moving fast, should there be a tenant that is an operator requirement checkpoint? That is an operator or requirement checkpoint.
Yes, sir. So I read that question, and in terms of a tenant, and as an academic as well, the answer is it depends. So with regards of whether or not it has to be a tenant, I think the tenants are guidelines. They're not intended to be strict rules. So I think the pushback on this one might be on the checkpoint side of things rather than the operator requirement. I think in terms of the tenant of making sure you deliver capabilities at work, making sure you talk to the operator is always a good sign. From an academic standpoint, that's literature review, seeing what people have done in the past and how it works. I think what is cautious though is in terms of the acquisition workforce, we are not only responsible for near-term threats, but we are also responsible for far-term. And sometimes the operator perspective may be more near-term, and acquisition officers would need to have to balance that with far term as well. So focus on not only evolutionary capabilities, but perhaps revolutionary ones.
The super good point with, looking at the future, kind of opening up it sounds so cliche, I hate to say it, opening up the aperture, but we need to be thinking about future consequences, and sometimes we're just thinking about that next milestone decision that we have to meet, and we surge on that, and then we're exhausted. We have nothing left. Super good points. So we have another question, and this one I'm going to throw out to the entire panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with Dr. Girth and go through the DAU team, and then we'll finish up with you, Lieutenant Colonel Lynn. Again, excuse me. And that is, does the panel believe there's value in establishing a GS Innovation Management Series? So that sounds like either like a career field or, obviously an occupational code. So interesting concept. So Dr. Girth, I don't know if you or Dr. McGuire have any thoughts on that. Over.
So what we know is you get what you measure, right? So if you're measuring or prioritizing an attribute, you're going to get it. That may or may not be what you want. I think so I'm going to give maybe a wishy-washy answer to this. I think it's an interesting idea, and it certainly would elevate innovation in the personnel space and provide an opportunity potentially to reward it. At the same time, what we really need to be developing is new muscles and muscular strength throughout the enterprise from the bottom up in terms of recognizing and proliferating good ideas. And I am a management researcher, right? So institutionalizing something like an innovation management series in the GS schedule, there's appeal to that. But also, will it actually get you what you want, which is you want your workforce broadly across the board to be developing new muscles to attack these new problems and challenges that we have quickly.
I would jump in on that and say there's certainly capabilities that can be cultivated around anticipating the need for innovation, being able to identify any potential kind of barriers or limitations with the existing processes or practices, and then being able to bring in the right people, the right viewpoints at the right point in time to be able to assess that idea and to look at its potential for broad scale implementation, and then to be able to use their networks and to be able to unlock the resources, the authority to be able to roll this out at scale. So I think there's a need for those capabilities to be developed internally within personnel.
Thank you. Dr. Barkand, Lolita.
I'm going to agree with the team on this one just because it's one of those things that, generally speaking, from our assessment, we found that innovation has to occur within the individuals supported by an organization. And I've always asked myself my question of, whenever you create a role for something, is it something that can be managed? So I'm going to put the question back to the group here as well. Can you manage innovation? We had trouble just assessing it, just to find out if people were innovative in general. Can it be managed? But more importantly, maybe, we do some of those different things like the thought leaders at your organization and things along those lines. We always know who the thought leaders are. Are they also your innovation leaders? Are they also different things? So I still follow the philosophy that you want leadership in your organization to support it, but you need it at each level, because let's say the new GS innovation managers over in IT, they're going to focus on that IT branch. You want innovation at all parts of your organization. So
love it.
The main thing is you always you end up siloing it as soon as you make a position, right?
Yeah, super. Yeah.
Okay, so that's my little part for that one. I always try to take the other stance, nice and strong on one side, just to give differing opinions, even if I don't believe them.
You're
a better man than me. All right, Lolita. Anything?
I think I was going to just say something similar, which is that though I think if you have management courses, I think it should be a part of some existing. Let's stuff it in, because truly there's no such all teams have to be created with all of the different types of folks in place. It's like, do you want creativity at the IRS? Maybe, maybe not. How could the creativity look different there than it would look, let's say, for instructional designers of learning assets? So I think that there's an opportunity for innovation at all those levels, and that the leadership should have those skills that encourage experimentation and creativity and all the wonderful things that we've talked about. But that it should, I don't know that it needs to be its own, its own thing, but I think all great leaders should know how to cultivate that, because great teams should have some folks on their team that are innovating.
I agree. Please don't be creative when auditing my tax returns. I'm not looking for creativity in auditing my tax returns.
Maybe when creating the tax return, maybe when
I need a little more. I need a little more innovation there.
So maybe we can look at and this is a bad way to go, because everybody wants to be creative, right? And innovative. And if we select certain career fields and say you are not allowed to be, you are not authorized to be innovative. So real quick, over to Lieutenant Colonel Lynn. So in the Marine Corps, we call them fitness reports, performance reports, I think, for the Air Force. Are you guys ready for a block that says innovation? And how's that going to be perceived?
Well, one of the Space Force sees is courage to change. So that could be one of those in processes. In terms of the innovation management and innovation as a whole, it being, as previous panels have said, being like a force multiplier. I equated something like cyber, where cyber is also a force multiplier. We do have folks in the cyber series, so they're dedicated to focus on cyber defense. But because cyber has such an effect on all of our operations, that everyone is at the front line of cyber defense. So perhaps in the same way, innovation needs to be that way too, where everyone needs to be involved to make things happen. But there are some that can help those mature or be experts in to help the rest of the team as well.
Appreciate that, Roger. Yep. So what's building up in my mind here is that we don't want people turning it into sort of a cottage industry. So we want it throughout our organizations applied, where necessary. I want to just real quick, I want to hit back. Some of you guys were outstanding, and there were a couple of questions out there, but I don't know that everybody else that's out in the space had a chance to see it. And Lolita, I'm just going to ask you you responded in writing to a question early on. Are you conducting research in DAU on these topics where we are few to work on topics in acquisition procurement? If you can just briefly talk about your answer real quick, so folks that might not be looking at the Q&A block, get a chance to see your answer or hear your answer.
Certainly, certainly. So Innovate to Win was designed specifically to be applicable at all levels of the DoD for all organizations, for everybody. And because of that, it's very broad in nature. And what we found, Jonathan and I, Marty Sherman, who's co-lead of Innovate to Win, who's also very instrumental in the program, is that people use Innovate to Win as a kickoff point, as their foundational building block for their own innovation programs that target specific functional areas, acquisition, leadership organizations, FAI, what have you. So that's kind of how we've turned what is a broad reaching project into something that supports innovation that is very targeted to particular areas. Jonathan, do you want to add to that?
Nope, I think we're in good shape. The end result was we wanted something applicable to everyone, and the main thing is we didn't feel like innovation was a functional area. So the end result is, even though we did have mostly acquisition professionals completing our assessment, if you went and took it today, even as an industry professional, academic, or other branches of DoD, you'd have the same experience as everyone else. So when you look at the questions, none of them are acquisition, procurement related type things. The end result is you can take that innovation and apply it to your own functional area. And that was the goal, was to make something that has a wider audience. So hopefully that's something enjoyable for everyone to go take. So the end result is you're not going to DAU to get an acquisition innovation assessment. You're getting an innovation readiness assessment.
A great little story in the chat from Mike Sand. I'm going to mess
up
the last name.
Be careful. I can help you out with this one. By the way, it's a plant, Lolita. I want you to know
I was about to say,
I
was like, that's after Mr. Kelley's own heart there, the little Marine story.
And I actually, it's a great story. We're going to give him his due, which I don't think he can speak, but since you picked up on it, I did not. And my hands are not on the steering wheel here. His name is Mike Sanavasi. He's a retired Marine, an exceptional Marine. He's had an incredible influence on my children's life, by the way. I want you to all know that. The fact that this man got out of his comfort zone, and I believe he is an instructional systems designer now, supporting the Marine Corps, either at Marine Corps Systems Command or Training and Education Command. But over to you, Lolita, to make a comment on Sanavasi's point. Over.
I just thought it was sort of timely that he was speaking about sort of and I think Lieutenant Colonel Lynn, you may have talked about this, Dr. Girth. I think you touched on this, but just sort of the energy and the innovation that's coming from the youth, and how we need that leadership support, and how these ideas sort of burble up. And even today, we think we have to go all the way back to the 1940s to create brand new ideas on how to do things better. But sometimes they can come from all the way, the folks that are actually doing the work. So I just thought it was a lovely narrative, and I hope that everybody can see that in the chat. I don't know what visibility people have, and if anybody wants to jump in and.
Okay, so the person that's going to jump in is going to be me. Okay, so I think what you did is you opened it up beautifully, and I think I heard this. I'm almost positive I heard it from Dr. Girth, but I think I heard it from everybody. And so these assessments, because I took the assessment, wanted to see, my own personal readiness, for innovation. I think that's really good. And I think everybody said it is out there. It is out there. So what I want is I'm going to go to everybody in the order that we started. So it's going to be Lynn, Barkand, Horne, Girth, and McGuire. Okay. what do leaders need to do in 2025 to take advantage of this innovation that we see out there? And you guys probably have 90 seconds to get through this. Okay. So in order, okay, what is your not recommendation, order? That's what I'm asking for. An order from you to leadership. How are we going to be prepared to capture this innovation that's out there? And Lieutenant Colonel Lynn, over to you.
So really short, the innovation funds, the squadron innovation funds that are out there for leadership to step out of the way and let the units decide what they need most.
Love that. That is a super good concrete example. And yeah, you're going to make Colonel, brother. I'm going to tell you that right now. Okay, good to go. Dr. Barkand.
I think the best thing that I'm going to offer is a self-plug. I think they should download the playbook that we have out on our website. I think you should review it. I think you should look at it. And I think you should improve your own innovation capabilities, because if you're hearing terms and things that you're not familiar with, you have to do a little bit of self-discovery and a little bit of self-learning. So take the assessment. It's going to give you a pathway. More importantly, score yourself low, score yourself honest, whatever you want to do. Don't worry about messing up our data with all those nice 4s. Give yourself 1s and 2s. It will give you a lot more training as well. So, you're always going to get that personalized learning when you take the assessment. So that's the end result, is sometimes you don't know where to start. And sometimes the first thing is taking a look at yourself.
Perfect. Thanks. And by the way, real quick, before I go to Lolita, I call her by her first name out of admiration, by the way. If you say Lolita here at DAU, everybody knows who you're talking about. Lolita.
I'm going to second Jonathan, which is my unoriginal answer, but my other answer is that we still need to keep a pulse on our communication, emotional sensitivity, particularly in times where there's a lot of culture change, a lot of overarching change. I think that the type of environment that supports innovation, there is the trust, psychological safety, and I think that cannot be foot stamped enough. And so that's my original addition to what Jonathan said.
Good to
Over.
go. Dr. Girth.
I'm going to break the rules, and I'm going to give a personal and a process. From a personal perspective, I'd say top cover. You cannot underestimate how often we heard about effects to personal and professional reputation as a barrier to innovate, and that just perpetuates risk aversion. But the second is process. Creating funding opportunities to allow these ideas to scale is critical.
Love it. And I failed to mention the whole scale thing, especially in context of local examples. Okay, Dr. McGuire.
I would say actively listening for and removing barriers to innovation that the frontline are experiencing.